Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you're hereby directed to call a regular session of the City Council to be held on Monday, October 4th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to a regular session of the Dubuque City Council for October 4th, 2021. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during the sections of the agenda where public input is accepted. Input options during the live meeting include: in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input on the item they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log into GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which item you would like to speak to in the chat function, or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which item you would like to speak to when phone lines are unmuted. All phone lines will be unmuted during the consent agenda, public hearings, and public input periods, and city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows: Mayor Buell.
Here.
Council members Kavanaugh.
Here.
Farber. Here. Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel. Here. Sprank.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Buell, I will turn it over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would ask all who are able to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Adrian.
The first item on the agenda is the Native American Land Acknowledgement.
Okay, thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands that have been home to several indigenous nations, land that has been occupied and seized over time. Over time, the Dubuque area has been home to the Oneota, Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki tribes for at least 11,000 years. We pay respects to their elders past and present. I invite you to join me to take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. We also recognize and are grateful for the land itself and those who remain stewards of this land, protecting it for current and future generations. This acknowledgement is only meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions, and acts only as a first step in honoring the land we are on, the people who have inhabited it and continue to inhabit it today, and building relationships that acknowledge our shared history. Thank you. Okay, Adrian.
Next on the agenda is COVID-19 update.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Mary Rose Corrigan, Public Health Specialist with the City of Dubuque. Thank you. Here to give you a COVID-19 update monthly. So, just a second here. There we go. Thank you, Adrian. So just taking a look at the cases since March 1st, 2020, you can see our latest wave is still increasing. And basically back, to some of the levels we had last fall. So we are still on the upward swing in this latest surge. Looking at positive tests in the last 7 days by age group, and this has been a trend for the past several weeks. Most of the positives are in the 0 to 17 and 18 to 29-year-old age group. And this slide accounts for 215 total cases in the last 7 days, which puts us, much like the rest of the country, in high transmission as we've been in since about August. Like I said, we had 215 cases in the last 7 days, and our 7-day average positivity rate is 6.2%. That was 5% last week, and we are at 208 cases per 100,000 population, and that number was 189 cases per 100,000 population. All of these metrics put us well above into the high transmission category. So along with that, we continue to do a lot of testing in the community, which is good. So then we know that our positivity rate is fairly accurate. The lower bars are usually the weekends, showing lower testing since most of the doctor's offices aren't in full swing. The providers have been on limited allocation of rapid test supplies. It's lightening up a little bit. Some of them are getting a few more rapid test supplies, but for the most part, those are only used on symptomatic, ill patients and those that are going into the hospital or having procedures. Everybody else, we recommend getting the regular PCR test through their doctor's office or the Test Iowa kit. So hopefully the test kit supplies will continue to increase on the rapid testing. We ask citizens not to go to the emergency room at the hospital for testing if they are not ill or only for travel reasons, those kinds of things. That's not a good use of the emergency room, and they have been very busy in the last few weeks. So the free testing is available through Test Iowa. That's their new method of providing testing, and it's very easy to get a kit. You can request one by mail, or they are available at quite a few sites, 12 sites in Dubuque County, and it's an easy test to do. You just collect a sample and then you return it via UPS, or some of the providers, you can take it back to them and they'll send it to Iowa City when they send the rest of their lab specimens. And you get the results in anywhere from, the average is about 48 hours, depending on the timing of when it gets to the lab. It could be another day or two, but it is free, accessible, and pretty much available. Now, the CDC on September 24th put out new COVID-19 booster recommendations for the Pfizer vaccine. And the highest rated groups that should get a booster are those 65 and older, and those in long-term care facilities, and those 50 to 64 with underlying medical conditions. And the recommendation further says that those age 18 to 49 and 18 to 64 who have increased risks, either through chronic health condition or through their exposure at an occupational or institutional setting, should also consider getting a booster. And those are happening already with the Pfizer vaccine. Now, it can be a little bit confusing, and the Iowa Department of Public Health came out with this infographic, because there is a difference between what we call the third dose versus the booster dose. So some groups, those that are severely immunocompromised or certain conditions that could make them at risk for disease, can get a third dose of the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. And that's been happening for several weeks now. The booster dose has only been approved through FDA for the Pfizer vaccine. And that's for those broad age groups I just mentioned, and eventually for everybody as we go through those priority groups. A look at how our vaccinations are rolling out. The top chart there is reported by the Iowa Department of Public Health as of September 30th, and we're at about 56% vaccinated of our population. And then below, the CDC reports on the various age groups and where we shake out in those age groups. We still have a ways to go on that 12 to 17-year-old population. They're only at about 46% or so vaccinated. We are still recommending people who are fully vaccinated or, of course, not vaccinated wear masks in public settings, and especially in areas with substantial or high transmission like Dubuque County. And people should wear a mask in public settings regardless of their risk. Now, we do know that the FDA Advisory Committee has set a timeline for improving the booster doses for Moderna and J&J. October 14th, they will be reviewing data for the booster dose for Moderna for 18 years and older. And the 15th, they'll be doing it for J&J for 18 years and older. And they have also set a date of October 26th because they know Pfizer is coming forth with their childhood immunization recommendation for those 5 to 11 years old, and so they've set that date aside for them. It's not been made public whether any of these boosters will be at 6 months or 8 months, so we'll have to stay tuned to see how they analyze the data and look at the research on that. So there will be a lot more messaging coming out on boosters, and sometimes it's complicated, but you just have to keep in mind what you got the first time around and hopefully try to keep this vaccine the same. Now, as far as targeted vaccine clinics with these boosters, because the first round of the first and second doses were prioritized over a time frame, we're not really doing that for teachers, healthcare workers, all of those various groups we had to prioritize and go through one-on-one when we started doing vaccinations. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, we don't have a vaccine shortage. There's plenty of vaccine available. And number two, the time frames from your second dose are kind of fall out naturally from when you got your first dose. So we're already seeing various groups present at their doctor's offices. All the retail pharmacies are offering vaccines through scheduling preferably, but they will take walk-ins. And we have set up a point of distribution or a pod clinic at the Dubuque County Firefighters Association training facility out there on Public Safety Way off of Seipel Road. Right now, the VNA is the only one using them, but we expect a couple of other providers to use them as their volume increases. They simply don't have the space in some of their clinics to do a lot of people at once. But we do have a lot more outlets for vaccine than we did back in the spring. And then with that, our City of Dubuque Sleeves Up phone line that serves the county residents is active and staffed by city staff and the city manager's office primarily, and they're available during work hours to guide people on where to get vaccines and what type, those kinds of things. And I'm in regular communication with them, telling them the latest and greatest information. We're doing outreach clinics when we have opportunities, and the VNA is the primary vaccination provider for those. They are doing walk-ins on Mondays, like today, at their site on Iowa Street. They're going to be at the pod out at the training facility Thursday and Friday. And just to give you an example, last week they did like 75 vaccines on Thursday at the training center. They did 142 on Friday at their office on Iowa Street. And they did a couple handfuls at the Latinx Festival in Washington Park on Saturday. So we know outreach clinics are still effective, and we'll keep doing them as opportunities come up with different events. So that's my presentation tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions or give you other information.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Rose. Anyone have any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
No
Jones.
question, but a comment. In case anybody missed it, her magazine made just possibly the most obvious choice ever and selected Mary Rose Corrigan as the Woman of the Year for 2021. So congratulations.
Great. Okay, any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mary Rose. I hope that before I'm done being mayor, that you're done giving these reports.
Great.
That would be great. All right, thank you very much.
We'll move on
Okay.
to proclamations. Our first proclamation is Energy Efficiency Day.
Hey, is there anyone in the chambers to accept this proclamation? Well, I think Gina, oh, there's Gina, there she is. I knew she was coming sometime.
Good evening. I wasn't
Good
sure
evening.
I could come in. I'm Gina Bell. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the city. And I just want to say thank you for recognizing energy efficiency and its place in our climate action plan, and also put in a plug for our Green Iowa team. We'll be staffed and ready to go at the end of this month. So if someone is looking for a home energy audit or weatherization services, we offer that for free. And so they can call my office or Google Green Iowa and sign up for a home energy audit.
Great information. Thank you for being here this evening to accept this proclamation. City of Dubuque proclamation. Whereas energy efficiency continues to be the most cost-effective, quickest, and cleanest way to meet our energy needs and reduce utility bills for residential, business, and industrial customers while making homes and work healthier, safer, and more comfortable. And whereas smarter energy use reduces the amount of electricity needed to power our lives, helps avoid power plant emissions which can harm our health, pollute our air, and change our climate. And whereas implementing energy efficiency and clean energy policies help boost economic opportunities and job creation while continuing to move toward a sustainable future. And whereas improved energy codes for homes and commercial buildings also can significantly reduce utility costs and create new jobs, and Dubuque, Iowa supports increasing the minimum levels of efficiency for new buildings through adoption of a stricter code or model 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, or IECC. And whereas the 50% by 2030 Community Climate Action and Resiliency Plan promotes equitable access to clean energy and helps to meet the emissions reduction goal. And whereas the first Wednesday in October is National Annual Energy Efficiency Day, and together the residents of Dubuque, Iowa can continue to contribute to our sustainability efforts by learning more about energy efficiency, the Dubuque County Energy District, and practicing smarter energy use in their daily lives. Now therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and citizens of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the 6th day of October 2021 as Energy Efficiency Day in the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and urge citizens to join us in supporting our clean energy goals and moving toward more energy efficiency now and in the future. Okay, our next proclamation is Indigenous Peoples Day. Anyone in the chambers to accept this proclamation?
I'm Jody Durnan, 250 West 6th Street, Apartment 810, Dubuque, Iowa. And I'm here to accept a proclamation.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Jody, for being here this evening to accept this proclamation. City of Dubuque proclamation. Whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the International Conference on Discrimination, against indigenous populations in the Americas as a commemoration of 500 years of survival and renewal of indigenous nations in the face of genocide and colonization. Tough word for me. Whereas a growing number of cities and towns in the United States have recognized the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples' Day as an opportunity to celebrate Indigenous heritage and resiliency. And whereas the city of Dubuque recognizes that the Indigenous peoples of this hemisphere have lived on these lands since time immemorial, and that Dubuque itself was built upon the homelands of the Meskwaki, Ho-Chunk, Potawatomi, and other Indigenous peoples of this region, and acknowledges and honors these members of the community. And whereas the city of Dubuque recognizes the historic, cultural, and contemporary significance of the Indigenous peoples of the lands that also became known as the Americas. And whereas the city of Dubuque desires to support the struggles of Indigenous nations for social and environmental justice, religious freedom, tribal sovereignty, and equity. And whereas the city of Dubuque seeks to bring greater understanding to the people of Dubuque regarding Indigenous cultures and the enormous contributions they have made and continue to make to our nation. Now, therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and citizens of Dubuque, hereby proclaim the 11th day of October, 2021, as Indigenous Peoples' Day in the City of Dubuque, Iowa.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge my friends who have helped me the past 4 years with this. Angie Brando, University of Dubuque, John Eby, Loris College, and his daughter Hannah, who's getting her master's there, and Eric and Brenna Nguata, who have the St. Isidore Catholic Worker Farm. Eric works at Cincinnati Mounds, does the landscaping and gardening there. They've been very instrumental in helping me to get this acknowledgement, and I'd like to thank the City Council and you also, Mayor, and thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Jody, for being here to accept this proclamation. You want me to pass it around for you, or do you want to come? If you want to come up and get it, please do.
Nah, that's dangerous.
Okay, we'll pass it around to you. Bring it down.
Appreciate it.
And our next proclamation this evening is Sister City Relationships Recognition Days. There's a familiar face.
Mayor Buell, City Council members, and city staff. I'm Kevin Fernstall, the chairperson of the Sister City Relationships Committee with Travel Dubuque. Thank you for presenting our proclamation tonight. On behalf of the committee and Travel Dubuque, I'm pleased to announce an upcoming photo exhibition recognizing Dubuque's three sister cities, Piatigorsk, Russia, Handan, China, and Dornbirn, Austria. So through an array of photos, music, and artifacts, we hope to bring awareness to the geographic, historic, and cultural similarities between Dubuque and its sister cities. The exhibition will open with a reception from 3 to 9 on Thursday, October 14th, with additional times on Friday and Saturday. It is free to the public and includes learning activities for children. We also want to thank the City of Dubuque for its Special Projects Grant that helped make the informative exhibition possible. And we all hope that you will be able to accept our invitation to view the exhibit. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here this evening, Kevin. Good to see you back in the chambers, and I will be at the exhibition.
Thank you.
Okay, City of Dubuque proclamation. Whereas Sister Cities International traces its roots to 1956, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower proposed a people-to-people citizen diplomacy initiative that creates global cooperation at the local level while promoting sustainable development, youth involvement, cultural understanding, and humanitarian assistance. And whereas the Sister Cities International Network represents more than 2,500 communities in 137 countries around the world. And whereas the City of Dubuque has established official sister city relationships with 3 cities, Piatigorsk, Russia, Handan, China, and Dornbirn, Austria. And whereas the Sister City Relationship Committee of Travel Dubuque will present an exhibition that recognizes and promotes each city through photos, food samples, and music. And whereas this free, informative, family-friendly exhibition will take place from 3 to 9 p.m. on Thursday, October 14th, 1 to 6 p.m. on Friday, October 15th, and 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, October 16th at 955 Washington Street. Now therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and citizens of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim October 14th through the 16th, 2021, as Sister City Relationships Recognition Days in the City of Dubuque, Iowa. And the next proclamation is Dubuque Lowe's Community Day.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Manager, I bring with me some family members, Abby and Anna, and some fellow employees that work alongside me, Patrick and Lisa and Crystal, from the Dubuque Lowe's store. We are here celebrating our 25th year. It was opened October 17th, 1996. That is the first day this store was open. It's my 25th year. I'm a local Dubuquer, so it's really a proud moment for me to stand in front of you and invite you each, 11 to 2. We will be having a celebration at the store in the parking lot with food and recognizing some of our employees, as well as awarding some community donations as well on that day. So appreciate having us here.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike, and the rest of the folks you brought with you for being here this evening to accept this proclamation. City of Dubuque Proclamation. Whereas the first Lowe's store opened 100 years ago in 1921 with a focus on having a rich heritage of putting the people they serve at the heart of everything they do. And whereas Lowe's Dubuque store is also celebrating a major milestone in 2021, having opened their Dubuque store 25 years ago on October 17th, 1996. And whereas in the past 25 years, Lowe's Dubuque store has provided tremendous service to the community in multiple ways, such as offering employee give-back time to volunteer in the community and providing substantial donations to local nonprofits, including Opening Doors, Four Mounds, Multicultural Family Center, Boys and Girls Club, and many more. And whereas Lowe's Dubuque further demonstrated their commitment to the community through their service in 2020 and 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic, exemplified through donating thousands of masks, wipes, and other cleaning supplies to Dubuque and Asbury businesses, police and fire departments, donating supplies to multiple school districts, and providing 300 buckets of cleaning supplies to the Back to School Bash. And whereas to recognize Lowe's 100-year anniversary and the company's commitment to their communities, the company has created the 100 Hometown Project Grants, with Dubuque receiving a $104,000 grant to support the Kennedy Park West apartments through new sidewalks, handicap parking, new parking lots, landscaping, and a community garden. Now therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council staff and citizens of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the 17th of October, 2021, as Dubuque Lowe's Community Day in the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and thank Dubuque Lowe's for their contributions to the community.
Good shooting, Mike.
Okay, and our next proclamation is Arts and Humanities Month.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. I am Jenny Peterson-Brandt, the Arts and Cultural Affairs Coordinator with the City of Dubuque, and it is my honor to accept this proclamation tonight on behalf of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission. The Commission would like to take a moment to thank and appreciate all of those in our community who work and volunteer towards arts and cultural and humanities efforts. I want to note that it's one of my greatest pleasures of my role with the City of Dubuque to work in partnership with a robust network of diverse citizens who dedicate their time and expertise in so many different ways towards cultivating and shaping a very dynamic creative sector that makes Dubuque a vibrant and desirable place to live, work, and play. The COVID-19 pandemic shifted how the arts and humanities operate nationwide and threatened the existence of our local arts and humanities nonprofits and the livelihoods of our creative workforce. I'm happy to say that all of our established organizations made it through the pandemic and are looking forward to coming back better than ever in their work with the community. At the same time, the pandemic heightened the role that arts and culture experiences play in communities, and we saw, and many of us I know experienced, that we turned to virtual concerts, museum tours, and online art lessons and the like to find hope and connection, and communities across the country are looking to the arts as ways to cultivate the economic and social recovery of our communities. We also want to acknowledge the role that engaging and accessible arts and humanities experiences play in the collective work to be a more just and equitable community. Expression through the arts and participating in activities that help us examine our shared humanity are key to telling the unheard stories, creating space for dialogue, and nurturing empathy and understanding. Tonight, in lieu of what we would normally do of an arts experience for all of you, instead, this evening, we're just encouraging all of you and the citizens of Dubuque to engage with us on social media through Facebook and our Instagram accounts for the City of Dubuque Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, where throughout the month we are sharing local activities and programs that are happening, and we're also participating in the Americans for the Arts 31-Day Show Your Art 2021 Challenge. So just a thank you from myself and the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission to all of you for continuing to acknowledge and prioritize the important role that arts and humanities play in the social vibrancy and economic robustness of Dubuque. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you for being here this evening, and really thank you to all of those who support the arts and humanities in this city. They played a huge role in getting us through this pandemic, and they're going to play a huge role going forward in getting everyone involved in this community and something they love to do and enjoy. So thank you all. City of Dubuque Proclamation. Whereas the coronavirus pandemic has had a devastating impact on America's arts sector, with 99% of producing and presenting organizations having canceled events and artists being among the most severely affected segment of the nation's workforce. Yet, notwithstanding this fact, the arts have helped collectively lead us throughout the darkest times of the pandemic, lifting our spirits, unifying communities, and jumpstarting the economy. And whereas the nation's 120,000 nonprofit arts organizations, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the nation's 4,500 local arts agencies, and the Arts and Humanities Councils of the 50 states and the 6 U.S. jurisdictions traditionally recognize the month of October as National Arts and Humanities Month. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and therefore serve to enrich life and inspire all Dubuquers to dream big and share their stories. And whereas Dubuque's creative and humanities sector is dedicated to using the power of arts and humanities to make Dubuque a more connected, just, and inclusive community. And whereas Dubuque's nonprofit arts and culture sector significantly contributes to our local economy, generating $47.2 million in total economic activity annually, spending by organizations and their audiences. supporting the full-time equivalent of 1,530 local jobs and generating $5 million in local and state government revenue. And whereas the City Council continues to prioritize investment in Dubuque's nonprofit arts, cultural, and humanities organizations and initiatives, while championing the ongoing implementation of the Arts and Culture Master Plan to create a vibrant and equitable community of choice. Now therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and citizens of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Arts and Humanities Month in the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts, culture, and humanities organizations, businesses, and workers in Dubuque. Okay, and our final proclamation this evening is Brain Health Awareness Month.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members and staff. I'm Peter Supel with the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque, and it's an honor to be here on behalf of Debbie Butler's Brain Health Now initiative. Collectively, we've done a lot with brain health over the years and will continue to do so. And so your support of the City of Dubuque is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening, Peter, to accept this proclamation. City of Dubuque Proclamation. Whereas brain health is critical to everyone's well-being, and whereas the brain is an organ susceptible to disease and disorder with biological and neurological basis, and often can be successfully treated. And whereas awareness and education is pivotal to end the stigma around mental illness. And whereas the Dubuque County Community Health Needs Assessment calls for mental health services that are accessible, creative, and evaluated. And whereas with effective education, coordinated services, access to care and treatment, those individuals with brain health issues and those that provide services to those individuals can work together for recovery in a stigma-free environment. And whereas the local Brain Health Task Force and Dubuque County Stakeholders Group consist of local services providers, public health, treatment facilities, policymakers, nonprofit members, advocacy groups, and those directly impacted by brain health disorders, are working to address the community needs and provide education and advocacy. Now therefore, I, Roy D. Buell, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, staff, and citizens of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Brain Health Awareness Month in the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and urge Dubuque residents to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of brain health and the need for understanding, acceptance, and awareness of all people with brain health issues. Okay, Adrian?
We'll move on to the consent items. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the consent items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Please state the item you would like removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and consideration.
Okay, is there anyone in the chambers that would like anything on the consent agenda held for separate discussion? See no one, is there anyone virtually who would like anything held?
Mr. Mayor, there are no comments in the GoToMeeting chat. Any phone participants now have the opportunity to speak, and the city clerk has not received any emails related to the consent items.
Okay, thank you very much. Bring it back to the table then.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and deal with the consent items as recommended.
Second by Sprank.
Motion by Mr. Resnick, second by Mr. Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Farber. Aye. Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel. Aye. Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0.
We'll move on to items to be set for public hearing. A total of 5. First is Water Service Connection Charge Assessment, 1951 West 32nd Street, set public hearing date for October 18th, 2021. Next is Resolution of Necessity for the Amendment of the Dubuque Industrial Center Economic Development District Urban Renewal Plan, version 2021.6 for November 1st, 2021. Third is set for public hearing, River City Development Group LLC, voluntary annexation request for November 1st, 2021. Fourth is set for public hearing, City of Dubuque voluntary annexation request for November 1st, 2021. And fifth is request for public hearing, State Revolving Fund Environmental Review, Old Mill Row Pump Station and Force Main Project for November 15th, 2021.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and set the public hearings for the dates and times indicated.
Second by Farber.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel. Aye. Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. Public hearings will be held on the dates and the times indicated in the council chambers.
We have no boards or commissions or public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to public input. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting may address the city council on the action items on the agenda or on matters under the control of the city council. For all in-person attendees, please approach the podium and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Individual remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and the overall public input period is limited to 30 minutes. Under the Iowa Open Meetings Law, the city council can take no formal action on comments given during public input or that do not relate to the action items on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to address the council? Seeing no one, is there anyone virtually who would like to address the council?
Mr. Mayor, there are no comments in the GoToMeeting chat. All phone participants have the opportunity to speak, and the city clerk has not received any public input.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to the action items.
Action item number 1 is proposed transition from Human Rights Department to Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Kavanaugh. Mike, please.
Thank you. Human Rights Director Kelly Larson is recommending renaming the Human Rights Department to the Office of Equity and Human Rights, along with the following changes. Establishing the mission of the office as advancing equity by identifying and addressing cultural, language, and structural barriers impacting underrepresented communities. Clarifying that the office will provide the following services: providing information and referral, including assistance with intake and filing of civil rights complaints to be forwarded to the city attorney's office for investigation. Patterns from these complaints could help to inform equity plans. Advocating for system-wide changes, bridging cultural, language, and service gaps to overcome structural barriers, supporting and providing assistance to community members from underrepresented communities to foster full participation in economic, social, and cultural life, coordinating efforts with other departments and partner organizations to engage underrepresented communities and advance equity, provide guidance on the use of data to measure progress on defined goals concerning social equity, race, and social justice, assisting, developing, and coordinating with public or private organizations that serve underrepresented groups. Staffing the department with the following 3 positions. Chief of Equity and Human Rights. This position, currently titled Human Rights Director and held by Kelly Larson, serves as the head of the office and reports directly to the city manager. The primary responsibilities involve collaborating with other departments and community members to advocate for system-wide changes, working to build the infrastructure to ensure policy decisions are evaluated through an equity lens, and directing implementation of the organizational equity plan. Pay and benefits for this position would remain unchanged. Equity and Human Rights Specialist. This position is essentially the organizational equity coordinator position, updated to reflect some of the duties that Collins EBO is engaged with in practice. This position serves as the vital connector between underrepresented populations for the purpose of assisting the Chief of Equity and Human Rights in identifying priorities for the organizational equity plan. An updated organizational equity coordinator job description with a title change is attached. Pay and benefits for this position will remain unchanged. Human Rights Intake Specialist. This position serves as administrative support for the Chief of Equity and Human Rights and the Equity and Human Rights Specialist. It provides information and referral for the public, including receiving inquiries, providing information, discussing options, and assisting in filing civil rights complaints. This position remains largely unchanged from its current status. Maintaining civil rights enforcement as it currently stands in practice, with intake responsibilities in the Office of Equity and Human Rights, investigation responsibilities with the City Attorney's Office, and outreach, education, and public hearing responsibilities with the Commission. Revising Title 8 of the City of Dubuque Code of Ordinances to align with this organizational structure regarding civil rights enforcement and advancing equity and inclusion. Vetting the clarification of roles and ordinance revisions with the Human Rights Commission, and potentially through a broader community engagement effort, and making adjustments to the proposals as needed before moving forward. There is minimal budget impact because these city positions already exist in the Human Rights Department. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Do you have any discussion? Kelly, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I have a short presentation.
Oh, okay.
If I can figure out how to get to that point here. All right. So Kelly Larson, Human Rights Director previously. I'm transitioning out of that position into Development and Training Manager position with the city, but I'm finishing up a few projects, including the one that we have here tonight. And so I just wanted to walk through a little bit of the background that led us to this point. Okay. There we go. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. So I think one of the things, when we think about human rights and when I talk to the public about it, I'm careful to distinguish between human rights and civil rights, first of all, and to also make the point that there are lots of things that we include under this umbrella of human rights, and it really can't be the sole responsibility of any individual or department. It needs to be something that we work together on as a community. Some of those various areas include diversity or representation, getting basic needs met, making sure that people have access to housing and employment and education and healthcare, equity in the sense of making sure that our characteristics such as our race or our gender are not interfering with our ability to meet our other needs and reach our potential, including people within the community so their cultures are represented and they're part of the larger community. And then I would put civil rights under the individual rights piece of things that are actually enforceable in a court of law. Because of course, a lot of the things that fall under this umbrella are not necessarily legally enforceable, but they're things that we work together to try to provide in the community. And so this idea of creating a culture that's centered in human rights requires that we have positions throughout the organization that are focused on different aspects of these areas of human rights. For many years, our department was actually structured as civil rights enforcement and solely civil rights enforcement. So when I started with the city, There was the human rights director position, the intake specialist position, and a part-time investigator position. In the intervening years, so that meant that most of our work, all of our work was really compliance related, and it was focused on investigating individual complaints of discrimination. That work is now conducted through the city attorney's office. We remain the place of contact for the general public, but the investigations themselves are conducted through the city attorney's office, where they have now added a full-time, what I would call investigator position, called the civil rights specialist. We also occasionally did some cultural events in the community, and back in 2005, the Multicultural Family Center opened. That, of course, has expanded over time, and that's the location where those events are occurring. We first began working on diversity and inclusion with the work of One Uma Consulting. This was a group that came in, did an organizational assessment, and gave us a set of recommendations on what we could do to ensure diversity and inclusion within the organization and in our service to the community as a city organization. One of the recommendations at that time was that we separate the reactive work of enforcement from the proactive work of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so that's the point at which we shifted those responsibilities for investigation to the city attorney's office. There was also a recommendation that we add a training and workforce development coordinator position to focus on recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce for the city organization. So that position came into our department. In 2012, we added a community engagement coordinator position. In 2014, we joined the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And in 2015, Inclusive Dubuque developed the first community equity profile. So those were the years when we started to weave equity into our work. When we started doing the equity work, a couple of the things that we focused in on included working with departments, first of all, to begin to develop their own individual equity plans, also continuing to work on a lot of the recruitment and retention side of the city's workforce until 2019, which was when our personnel department shifted to a human resources department. At that point, our workforce development person moved over into human resources, and that department now heads up the work around recruitment and retention within the city organization. Also in 2019, we engaged a consultant to come in and do the Equitable Poverty Reduction and Prevention Plan. That plan resulted in the creation of the Office of Shared Prosperity and Neighborhood Support. That department is going to be focused on the larger question of poverty reduction, or what I call, sort of the basic needs part of equity or of human rights work. Some of those projects will have a specific equity component, meaning that they're focused in on addressing groups that have been historically discriminated against. So those kinds of projects may still come to our department for implementation. An example of that is the School Resource Officer Work Group that we have operating right now. So that came out of that plan. But our department is the one that will work on that particular project. So the equity focus in our department at this point, once we moved the recruitment and retention over to the Human Resources Department, we now, this year with the starting of the Office of Shared Prosperity and Neighborhood Support, are moving the Community Engagement Coordinator to that Office of Shared Prosperity Department. And this is the proposal for our department moving forward. So it would be that we would have these three positions, as Mike mentioned. The Chief of Equity and Human Rights is the director position. This is in alignment with an increasing, the increasing number of local governments who have chief equity officers. That's becoming something that is happening more and more, so that we have someone who's specifically focused in on equity, disparities, and addressing gaps as the primary focus for that position. The Equity and Human Rights Specialist would be someone who's doing some specific equity projects and also is keeping in contact with groups that have historically been discriminated against or marginalized. And then the Human Rights Intake Specialist continues to be that point of contact for people who are filing complaints of discrimination. So this is what this means in terms of our day-to-day work. Everything you see on this slide is what we're doing currently. There's nothing that's being taken away from our responsibilities or added to our responsibilities. It's really just taking what we've been doing and aligning the title of the department, the title of the commission, the duties within the ordinance that the commission has, and the titles within our staff positions to be explicit that equity is the primary focus. So we'll continue to do our equity workshops, work with managers on equity projects within their departments, implement the equity plan that we have currently and the projects under that plan, work with the Dubuque Community Police Relations Committee, do bias incident response, do complaint intake, and then work across other institutions on larger scale inequities that really require the cooperation of multiple institutions to address. So the College Access Network is an example of that, or the Pacific Islander Health Project. And so that just sort of gives you the picture of how we've gotten to this point, why we're proposing what we're proposing, and I would answer any questions that you have at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly, for that overview. Anyone have any questions? Okay, I think we must have an understanding kind of what's going on there and with the change, and I think it's going to be a good thing for the city and certainly for our citizens, and good luck in your new position.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, the motion on the table is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings of the ordinance. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, seconded by Mr. Kavanaugh. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0.
Action item number 2 is Kennedy Road Water Main Extension Project 2021 Award Resolution.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kavanaugh, please.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Sprang.
Motion by Mr. Kavanaugh, second by Mr. Sprank. Mike, please.
Thank you. City Manager Mike Van Milligan. Water Department Manager Christopher Lester and City Engineer Gus Sahoyas are requesting City Council adoption of a resolution which gives authorization to award the construction contract for the Kennedy Road Water Main Extension Project 2021 to Drew Cook and Sons Excavating the amount of $752,852. This amount is 16.8% under the estimate of probable cost. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have any discussion? Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0.
Action item number 3 is U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Older Adult Home Modification Program Grant Agreement.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Second by Farber.
Motion by Ms. Roussel, second by Ms. Farber. Mike, please.
Thank you. City Manager Mike Van Milligan. Housing and Community Development Director Alexis Stager recommends City Council authorization of an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, for the use of $1 million to administer an older adult home modification program grant to help an aging population age in place or stay in their homes as they age. The Housing and Community Development Department will administer this program, partnering with Unified Therapy Solutions as a requirement of the grant to have an occupational therapist evaluate the needs in the home. The city will also team with the HEART program from 4 Mounds to complete the modifications to each home. Each unit will average $4,000 of improvements such as grab bars, non-skip flooring, removal of uneven thresholds, railings, and other modifications as identified by the occupational therapist. This program requires a program manager that dedicates at least 50% of a full-time equivalent to this grant and a financial specialist to complete the intake processes, administrative work. These positions will be combined into one full-time equivalent and increases the number of full-time equivalents in the Housing Department on a temporary basis by 1. This agreement is for 36 months and will complete approximately 230 units. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request mayor and city council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Have any discussion? Yes, Mr. Sell.
Well, I'm very pleased that this could provide amenities for many of our older residents to stay in their home much longer with these modifications that are going to make things easier and safer. And it's certainly more cost-effective for people to live in their own home rather than a nursing home and to remain independent. But I asked if this grant could be used for something like snow removal, but I found that it's only for structural changes. And so one additional challenge that I'd like to put out to our community is to build a group of people that might help residents with snow removal or other tasks around their home, because this is a challenge for many, not only elderly, but also disabled individuals who own a home. So even if the inside of the home is updated, they'll still have concerns about being able to live in their own home. And I saw a news story recently about Cedar Rapids, and they had a program called Snow Buddies, where local volunteers could help those in need with snow removal. And we have such a generous and giving community that I just want to challenge our nonprofits to come together and see if this is something that we can provide to help people, to help these seniors in need. So even though we can provide these great amenities on the inside, there are still going to be challenges for people to remain in their home. So just a thought starter for folks out in our community. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Mr. Frank, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few questions. I'm really excited for this program because, one, this allows our seniors to age in place and stay in their homes longer and longer. And so a couple questions, my few questions are, and I got hung up on the term units. I'm assuming that can be individuals, individual homes, as well as, it doesn't mean like an apartment complex? Because I think that's just probably Hutton's terminology, I would assume.
This is Alexis Steiger, Housing and Community Development Director. That is, it actually is not allowed to be used in rental units. So it is just a homeowner, but it can be, if they live in a duplex, it can be just their side of the duplex. So it's whatever the owner, the portion of the home that the owner owns.
Okay. And two more questions. Are there income guidelines specifications?
Yes, they follow the same guidelines as our others, so like our lead grant, et cetera. So they're the same 80% of the area median income or below.
Okay. And then the last question is this location specific, kind of like how the B branch was focused on certain parts.
It is not, it's citywide.
Citywide,
So,
awesome.
yep,
Okay.
does not have to be specifically in any location in the city, just has to be in the city limits.
Even better. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alexis. This is great that this exists. I guess this kind of goes off of Ms. Roussel's question before. Are there, this came from HUD, right? So are there any other programs like this that address some of the other needs that might make it difficult for people to age in place and stay in their home? I mean, are there any other programs that are out there that aren't just for home modification, but are for some other things that involve staying in one's home? I know it's a very broad question, but I'm just curious what's out there.
Sure. So there is actually a model called Capable, and HUD specifically says that's not this model, but Capable, what it does is goes through all of those things such as services that might be needed to keep you in your home as well, such as the snow removal, and then tries to team the person with area nonprofits, et cetera, that can actually service that need. We don't, HUD's not currently using that model here, but we do have, Medicaid sometimes requires that model to be used, and we will be using the money for some of those people who are on that program. So there may be some connections, but we are going to be working with our nonprofit partners to start looking at any of those needs, like we do with Beaver Ranch Healthy Homes.
Mm-hmm.
There's buckets of needs and who can serve those buckets, and if there's a bucket that isn't being served, that we find a nonprofit or somebody that can serve that need as that we see those numbers rise.
That's great. You said Capable is not currently in use here by HUD. Why is that?
HUD actually just does not have it as part of their programs. Capable is something that you can use as an occupational therapist if you have long-term clients that you're continually following. We don't have a ton of services that do that here other than as required through Medicare and Medicaid.
I see. So it'd be a matter of, for instance, like a nonprofit partner, for example, or a business starting that as a service model, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Understood. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Resnick?
Yes, thank you. And is there a person involved, is there some home specialist that is involved that we could use as well? I mean, I know that there's somebody who's half-time going to be administering this program, because, I mean, I think it's important for people who can stay in their home if they need a little assistance, but there's also a time where people need to be transitioned, and that's often difficult. I know some people in my family who stayed too long at the fair. And there's a time where, yes, we've done everything we can. Is there someone that can help them and say, maybe another good solution for you would be to simplify your life by doing the next steps? Is that part of this grant at all?
Yeah, so the occupational therapist, if they see that modifications within the home are not going to help them age in place, can make those referrals. We have some home health care, and it may just be the next step within your home, having somebody come in to help you. But like you said, it may also be that they need the evaluation to get into an assisted living facility, because you need the evaluation before. And so they will make those connections if they look around the home and say, hey, the modifications are not going to be something that keep you here, so let's look at other options. So yes, it is part of that referral.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Alexa. Thank you. Okay, the motion is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprang,
Aye.
Barber. Aye. Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Buell.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0.
Next on the agenda are council member reports.
Any council member reports? Ms. Roussel, please.
Well, in my mail today, I was excited to receive my certified elected municipal official certificate. And this is something that I read about in the League of Cities magazine that said it was a learning opportunity. And so I started it when I was in my first year on the council. And what you have to do is you have to be a member of some of the National League of Cities committees. So I serve on 2 of those. You have to be a member of a state League of Cities committee, and I serve on the Government Affairs Committee. And you have to take a number of training courses that they offer and that other entities offer so that you can have a better understanding of your role, because there's so much to learn. And so I was really excited to get my certificate today. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
just like to remind everybody that there's a primary election citywide in Dubuque tomorrow, where we'll narrow the field of 5 candidates for mayor to 2 and 4 candidates for at-large city council to 2. And people need to go show up and vote.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Sprank.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say thank you to the MFC for the Latinx festival that they put together, or the Latino X festival that they put together on Saturday. That was really nice down there, right at the park, right outside of Chambers. It was just a really good event. Families were having fun, so thank you to the MFC for that.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Okay, well, there being no further business on the agenda, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all.